Good morning. Thank you. That was very nice to say good morning back. Happy third day of Writers Week. Yeah. Yeah. You've had two awesome performances, and you get a super special one today, because you're going to see the principal, Mr. Teneper, say some words, and a pillar of the community, Mr. Bruce. So let's hear a round of applause for them. Before we begin, I just want us to take a moment to thank the boosters in our head, because they're not here. Thank your teachers, but they are here, so go ahead and turn to them and say thank you. Yeah, very nice of you. Enjoy. I don't think there's any more I have to say. Yeah, woohoo! Writers Week, Day 3, yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Well, thank you. I just want to very quickly, I appreciate this opportunity. This is my this is my farewell tour here at Fremd. And it's always been a little bit of a bucket list item for me, so I do appreciate the opportunity. Ms. Ank, Mr. Anderson, the entire English department do an awesome job, doing an incredible job, really. And I've been around, so I know the beginning, and I always try to fit a Writers Week Day in for my students. So all those teachers who did that today or whatever day of the week you do, I really appreciate it. And a special shout out to my first period AP macro class for sacrificing the opportunity to learn a little econ, or so you thought. I mean, that's the deal. Just real quick. I might as well just get to this. But just by a show of like an audible or a reaction, how many of you have taken econ? Okay, all right, so just a quick exchange. This is like a audience participation. Can you have it all? No! Can you ever have it all? No! Thank you very much, I appreciate it. No, I'll get to my piece here. I'd like to share with you a haiku. Thank you, Writers Week. Check off bucket list item. Keep up the good work. Okay. When I was thinking about what I could share with you today, there were many different paths I could go, and I chose for me the less traveled one. So I dedicate this to all you students who put yourself out to do Writers Week or whatever you do, to give yourself a chance to express your voice or your talents. It's not easy, and I really appreciate it. I mean, one of the great things about being a high school teacher is you get a glimpse into that future, and you guys are going to do great things. So I appreciate your bravery, and I'm going to try to dedicate this in a piece to you. Then I also want to dedicate this to somebody who you might hear tomorrow. Tony Romano was one of the pioneers, the founders of Writers Week, and he has heard me in different settings, kind of give little talks and stuff. And the ones that he always appreciated the most, he said, "You took a risk," and he was real blunt about it too. It's like, "No, not that time." Okay, but this, that you took a risk. So, so this is for him, and I hope you enjoy it. The title of this is 4, the number 4. How many brothers and sisters do you have? Shouldn't be a difficult question to answer. For me, the answer is 4. I have 2 older brothers, an older sister, and a younger sister. How many brothers and sisters do you have? Shouldn't be a difficult question to answer. But for me, it actually is. And when I've been asked that question for most of my life, I've tended to freeze up, and my mind races between responding 4 or 3. In fact, my wife told me that when she hears me ask this question, she cringes, since she knows that I will struggle with my response. How many brothers and sisters do you have used to be an easy question for me to answer, but that all began to change on New Year's Day in 1984. In 1984, I was 23 years old, living back at home after college with my parents and younger sister, while I was beginning my work towards earning a teaching certification. What I remember about that New Year's Day is this. My family had gone to church that morning, and my older sister, who lived nearby, met us there. After the service, my older sister mentioned something about stopping at a store, but I knew I'd see her a few hours later since she and her husband were coming over for dinner. As she was leaving, she asked me, "Where's my hat?" A reference to a tweed cap she had given me for Christmas. The cap was a bit of a joke present, since I was unlikely to ever consistently wear the cap. But if truth be told, it was a look that I was considering going for at that time. But as of that morning, I hadn't fully committed to this fashion statement. "Where's my hat?" she asked as she gave me a small poke with her finger. As we left the church, there was a light snow falling, nothing much, just enough to make the roads a bit slippery. Once back home, we started to prepare for our New Year's Day family gathering. Shortly after getting home, my brother-in-law called looking for my older sister since he expected her to be back at their apartment by now. I think I answered the call, but I really can't remember. However, I do remember us saying that we thought she was going to stop at a store first, so we shouldn't worry. A while later, my mom called my brother-in-law back to check to see if my sister had arrived home. A priest answered the phone. There had been an accident, and my older sister was gone. Panic, confusion, fear, sadness, and disbelief filled our home. Disbelief being central in my mind. "Where's my hat?" I believe that these were the last words she spoke directly to me. In the hours and minutes that followed, I remember crying and praying, and at least to some degree offering comfort to others as family and friends began to gather at my parents' home. I also remember experiencing a strange need to share this news with others. I can't explain why I felt this to be important. I even asked my girlfriend, who was living in New York City at the time, to reach out to some college friends to just let them know this news. I seemed to want others to know this had happened. As the days went by, the level of grief expanded. I frequently played cards with my brother-in-law and his family. It was an easy distraction for him, which was my primary goal, but it also helped me as well since I was still firmly grounded in the land of disbelief. My older sister's name is Marianne, though generally I called her Mary or simply Mare. She and I were very close, and this loss was draining to me. We were about 4 years apart, and we could always make each other laugh. She was my big sister, and she knew me very well. She was a role model, a confidant, and someone who helped me through some rough times in my early years of college. She was an artist, and some of her drawings and paintings are hanging on the walls of my home and the homes of my mom and my other siblings. But today I'm not looking to revisit much more about that particular day or the weeks and months that immediately followed. Instead, I want to reflect on the time that came after. For many years after her death, it's fair to say that my family and I dealt with the tragedy with silence or sadness. We either didn't talk very much about Marianne, or if we did, it was generally riddled with heartache, as we mostly reflected on her loss. Her death, of course, was devastating to my parents, and for a time broke them. To lose a child is something that I could only imagine. As you might guess, New Year's Eve celebrations became subdued, and New Year's Day wasn't much of a holiday for us. Perhaps since she was the middle child, Mary seemed uniquely plugged into me and my other siblings. I feel that she had a special yet separate connection to each of us. So in a way, I believe that her loss touched us each differently, but I'm speculating, since even among ourselves, we chose not to talk much about Mary. As for me, I've known my wife for 38 years, and we have been married for close to 32 of these years. Without a doubt, she knows me better than anyone else, and we were dating at the time of my older sister's accident. She was the girlfriend I referred to earlier. She tells me that something changed dramatically in me that day, more significant than I even remember. Although my classroom persona might suggest otherwise, I'm a very shy and introverted person, and in truth be told, I always have been. But there's a difference between being shy and being withdrawn. After the death of my sister, I guess I kind of shut down. It was hard for me to connect with or get close to other people. Something that in the past I had always been able to do despite my shyness. Even when people would share their struggles with me, I didn't know quite how to respond. It was almost as if I had forgotten how to empathize. I became very guarded. And I'm certain that the bottling up of these emotions allowed me to avoid ever fully dealing with the reality of my sister's death, and in turn allowed me to continue living in the land of disbelief. But I understand that this was not the best path for me and has come at a bit of a cost. Although some of these traits were always present as I grew up, I became even more of a worrier. I became more fearful. And across the years, I've struggled with issues of anxiety and sometimes depression. How many brothers and sisters do you have? If I answer 4, I fear the follow-up questions. What do they do? Where do they live? I feel this would start off an uncomfortable conversation, and I at least tell myself that I don't want to burden someone for asking that question. But if I answer 3, I feel like I'm disrespecting my sister's memory and ignoring or even removing Mary from my life. How my other siblings handle this question, I cannot say. I've never asked, though I think now that I should have. Maybe for them, this question does not present such a dilemma, and maybe it wouldn't for you either. All I know is that I lost my sister when I was 23, 36 years ago, and more often than not, I haven't allowed myself to talk much about it. And in this realization, I feel a sense of loss all over again, because I have come to discover that by removing Mary from my conversations, I have also lost some of the memories of her. So why share this now? Perhaps it's a continuation of a desire to let other people know, or to help other people better understand me. Perhaps I feel the need to encourage you not to follow in my footsteps when you face loss in your lives. Perhaps this is just for me, an attempt to give myself a bit of a nudge to be more open to sharing more of who I am with others. Maybe it's all about all of the above. I'm at a point in my life now where, unlike many of you who are constantly looking forward, I inevitably am looking back to my past. In the last 7 years, my father has passed away, my mother-in-law has passed away, my wife has faced some significant health scares, my children have grown up and left the house, my mother and siblings are all getting older. My teaching career is nearing an end. So it's fair to say that I spend much time reflecting on the past and the choices I have made. Please don't get me wrong. I have lived a blessed and happy life. But when it comes to some of my personal relationships and friendships, I cannot say that I'm proud of my record. In 2002, for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, I decided to create an iMovie out of our family's home movies. This required me to look through hours of film that I hadn't watched in quite a long time. Most of the footage was shot before Mary's death. We watched this close to 2-hour iMovie together as an entire family. And though there was certainly sadness in watching the scenes with Mary, it actually became more of an opportunity for us to laugh again and to enjoy the happiness that Mary brought to all of our family and each one of us. Mary had been gone from our lives for 18 years, but this shared experience, in a way, made our family whole again. Watching the old movies proved to be therapeutic. The silence began to fade, and it became easier to share familiar stories once again. Yet 18 years had passed since I made that iMovie, and still, when I've been asked that question, how many siblings do you have, I tilt towards answering 3. So I think that sharing my story with you all today comes down to this. I've heard that to work past a problem, you need to work through it. So I'm caught wondering, what have I missed by hiding this part of my family's story, and in turn, part of my personal story? Just so you know, there have been times where I have shared Mary's story and other of my life struggles with other people. It's just that those are very rare occasions. But when I have, I've never regretted it. It's just that getting me to that point is such a challenge. Maybe it's the power of my shyness winning out. Conversations can heal our hurt, but you have to share your story, and this generally means making yourself vulnerable, and that can be difficult. When I've been asked this question and responded 3, what opportunity was lost? I think that I wouldn't want someone to protect me from such an awkward moment. I wouldn't see this as a burden. Life is full of loss for all of us. It's a common thread that binds us. But how we choose to deal with our battles can make all the difference. Our losses, struggles, heartaches, and tragedies help shape us. We are who we are because of our pain, not in spite of it. But even though our pain helps to define us, we shouldn't allow it to defeat us. What I've learned across the years is that there is always someone out there that will have your back. Perhaps even someone you don't expect. But to realize this, you might need to go to that place that makes you less comfortable and take that risk. Talk to each other, share your stories. And if you need to talk to someone that might have a better grasp on how to help you cope, seek that help out. Asking for help does not mean that you failed. Asking for help isn't the first step towards a life of dependency. Instead, it provides even more an opportunity for you to heal and move through and eventually past your pain. Sometimes some kind of a support group might be needed. Sometimes someone to listen is all that it takes. Because simply saying the words out loud might be more important than the response you receive. And maybe in the sharing of your story, you might even discover that other people actually understand because they have experienced a similar loss or pain. You might actually help to heal one another. But I strongly encourage you not to end up like me, just starting to come to grips with a loss 36 years later. I can't change the past. I can't undo my choices, but I can choose a different future. So from here on out, when I'm asked that simple question, how many brothers and sisters do you have? My answer is 4. Thank you very much.
Now I know why there's a big box of Kleenexes up here. And I also know why Mr. Bruce is loved by every student who has walked through his classroom doors. That was great. And in true Writers Week fashion, you're going to get everything that Writers Week is about. All of those emotions that are within us as humans will probably be present here on this stage. So you got Mr. Bruce's speech here, and we're going to shift gears a little bit. So this is what I've seen happen quite a bit. So be ready for this here. I want to start off with something a little bit more lighthearted. I love the 80s. The music, the clothes, the movies. Inside my head, it feels like an episode of The Goldberg where everything is just a big 80s reference. My idea of a quiet night at home involves watching one of the blockbusters of my youth. Ghostbusters, Top Gun, Revenge of the Nerds, Ferris Bueller, and I've even started to indoctrinate my kids. My passion for the 80s grows so strong that oftentimes these references leak into the lessons that I try to teach others. And so today's lesson is inspired by the Karate Kid. I was just waiting to see how she was going to sign Karate Kid. I thought it was going to be a little bit more dramatic than that, but we'll keep trying. Not the 2010 version of Karate Kid with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith, which I've admittedly not seen. I'm protesting. I'm not even talking about the YouTube series called Cobra Kai. I'm talking about the OG with Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita, Daniel San and Mr. Miyagi, 1984. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, let me do a quick recap. I'm going to make it really quick. Just maybe by a round of applause, how many people have seen the movie? 84? Oh, wow, quite a few, okay. So I'm going to do a real quick recap. Daniel is a fairly normal boy who moves to a new town, but he finds it hard to make friends. He quickly becomes a target for a group of boys who think they're better than everyone else. And just like in every other 80s movie, our protagonist falls in love with the wrong girl. In this case, Daniel falls for Allie, who is in the same clique as Johnny, one of the toughest fighters at the Cobra Kai dojo. One night, Daniel gets jumped by Johnny because of his love of Allie and the other Cobra Kai goons, only to be saved by Mr. Miyagi, Daniel's aging landlord. They give you the impression that Mr. Miyagi is just some meek bonsai tree pruning old man, when in fact he's a bona fide lethal weapon in the art of karate. Stay with me, I'm getting to the good part here. Daniel convinces Mr. Miyagi to teach him karate. So Mr. Miyagi invites Daniel to his house where he forces Daniel to do all the things around his house. He makes him paint the fence, sand the deck, wax his car collection. That's where the wax on, wax off comes from, if you've ever heard that. And just as Daniel-san is getting frustrated with all this free labor he's providing to Mr. Miyagi proves to him how each of these emotions equates to a defense move to block punches and kicks in battle. At this point, Daniel has bought into Mr. Miyagi's teaching methods, and his learning takes off. Daniel's lessons conclude at a lake where Mr. Miyagi makes Daniel stand on a boat and practice his karate moves. And this is where Daniel sees Mr. Miyagi demonstrate crane technique. Really? Not even the crane technique? No? Okay. So the crane technique. These final lessons seem to be the most important to Daniel's success, and they both depend on amazing balance. On the boat, Mr. Miyagi keeps preaching, balance, Daniel-san. And when Daniel attempts the crane technique, he's initially wobbly until he learns, you guessed it, balance. And this is why I spent the last 3 minutes talking to you about the Karate Kid. I don't know karate, and I'm not going to force you to do manual labor, but I am here to talk to you about balance. Just as balance becomes an indispensable part of Daniel's success in the karate tournament at the end of the movie, balance is an indispensable part of your ability to be successful in life. But here's the thing about balance. When balance is achieved, great things can happen. A balanced diet leads to optimum health. Balance in art creates a visual equilibrium. Balance in sports or dance leads to an outstanding performance. But here's another thing about balance. Balance is neither easily achieved nor easily maintained. Balance infers some level of instability, uncertainty. If only I could eat a balanced diet, I would have that six-pack that I've always wanted. If balance in art were easy, I'd be Van Gogh. And if my dancing possessed a great balance of rhythm, athleticism, and timing, my wife wouldn't be embarrassed to dance with me at weddings. In a school like Fremd, there's a lot of pressure to excel. In the classroom, on the stage, on the court, on the field, and in life. A lot of pressure to excel from your teachers, your parents, your classmates, from your principal, and from yourself. And this pressure can feel like a Jenga tower wobbling on a foundation comprised of a single wooden piece. It isn't easily achieved or maintained. But it's not just the pressure to be the best you can be, it's also the pressure some of you feel to keep up with the accomplishments of your classmates. I want you to think about our school for a minute. It's one of the top schools in the state. Not just academically, but in the fine and performing arts, in our competitive activities, and in almost every sport that we have. There is not a single weak link around this building. And we take great pride in everything we do here. But here's the other side of the coin. A couple years ago, a student told me, it's cool that our teams are so good, but it makes it hard for the average person to even make a team. So let me just talk to you about how difficult that truly is. Take, for example, our girls' basketball team. While most of the area teams are lucky to have one, maybe two athletes go on to play basketball in college, this year, Fremd has 5 graduating seniors who are going on to play at college, and others who have committed who are not seniors, which means that there are college basketball players playing at Fremd who have to come off the bench. Let's take debate, for example. There's only 50-some schools in the state that have debate, but here at Fremd, we have so many students who want to go out for debate that we have to make cuts. So what does this have to do with balance? Let me tell you. It's wonderful to pour yourself into something so deeply that you become an expert. But for every Bill Gates, for every Elon Musk, for every LeBron James or Yo-Yo Ma, there are thousands of people who have chased the same dream, lived a happy, successful life, but under the radar from pop culture and public consciousness. It's a rare occasion when it's okay to define yourself by something you do. If your happiness or your sense of accomplishment is based on one achievement, then your priorities are misaligned. I know what you're thinking right now. You're saying to yourself, Self, did my principal just tell me it's okay to be average? That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that there are many paths to happiness, fulfillment, and success. focusing on one area where you didn't achieve happiness, fulfillment, or success is a disservice to your personal growth and to your life's balance. The job of high school principal is many things, but to you and your parents, the area where I spend most time is on customer service. Something went wrong, and people reach out to me to see if I can make it right. You didn't get in the honors level of the course you wanted? Parent phone call. The teacher gave you a B? Parent phone call. You didn't make the varsity? Parent phone call. The National Honor Society Selection Committee must have made a mistake because you weren't selected? Parent phone call. But I get it. Everyone is shooting for the brightest future possible, which means you need to take as many rigorous courses as you can, get the highest grades possible, and be as heavily involved as you can. And once you've done all that, you can apply to the most selective schools, study with the smartest people in your field, get admitted to a top grad school program, get recruited by top companies, live in a big house with the perfect spouse, with the perfect number of kids, who you will raise to also be perfect. But at what cost? Sure, your friend is aiming for a highly selective school and you don't want to look like a slouch in comparison. And maybe even more challenging, your parents are hoping that you can get into their alma mater or some school that they read about that has a top degree program that you're interested in. The truth is, those would be fine choices, but they're not the only choices. If they don't work out, it's going to be okay. So remember what I said earlier. If your happiness or sense of accomplishment is based on one achievement, in this case getting into one of a very small pool of colleges, then your priorities are misaligned. Here's another stark reality for you as you're chasing the grades and accolades to get into a top school. For the first time in the history of America, a generation of Americans, we'll call them millennials, ages 24 to 39, they are not guaranteed to have a more prosperous life than their parents. In fact, in a recent survey by YPulse, an organization that tracks Gen Xers and millennials, it showed that millennials' number one life goal is not to get into a fulfilling relationship, to build a career of their dreams, or to start a family. Instead, their number one life goal is to get out of debt. So think about that college you want to get into. The average millennial has $42,000 in debt. 2/3 of millennials say financial stress compromises their ability to focus and be productive at work. That's double the percentage of baby boomers. Almost a quarter of millennials report that financial stress causes them to feel physically ill on a weekly or monthly basis. A big chunk of this financial stress is a result of college loans. Whereas your parents could attend college relatively cheaply, tuition has exploded in recent years. Here's an example for you. In 1985, tuition at the University of Illinois was $1,248. When we adjust that for inflation to today's dollars, that's $3,000. Can anybody tell me what it is for U of I today? 33,000? Okay, 40,000. So I guess my point is it all comes back to balance. Balance is saying, I'm going to try as hard as I can to put myself in the best possible scenario for success. Balance is saying I'm not going to limit my options to just a few choices, but I'm going to be open to a series of choices that are at my disposal. Balance is telling yourself that you tried your hardest. It might not be enough, but it doesn't mean the world is crumbling down around you. Balance is understanding that your life is more meaningful than one grade, one achievement, one goal. Balance is understanding that life is a marathon and not a sprint. And the finish line is not your college acceptance or even your first job. I grew up in a rural Nebraska town. I had 24 kids in my graduating class, 150 kids in my high school. I had access to one AP class, but I would have had to have taken it through distance learning. Does anybody know what that is? You watch your teacher on a TV who is teaching in some other school, and I would have mailed my homework to that teacher, and then about a week later I would have gotten it returned back to me through the mail. I went to Nebraska Wesleyan University. It's a pretty good private school, but probably not more noteworthy than 1,000 other schools in this country. So please understand there's more than one path toward your happiness. And if you don't get as fast of a start in life as other people, don't worry. Because like I said, life is a marathon, not a sprint. And frankly, the part of the race that you're in now is the part where your legs aren't quite warmed up. Your heart rate hasn't had time to settle in, and the finish line feels like it's an impossible battle, but it's going to get better. My career has not been without setbacks. I've applied for many jobs that I didn't get. And I lost a position due to financial cutbacks in the district I worked in. I had to keep telling myself that the world wasn't crumbling down around me. Balance. That's when I landed a job at Fremd as an assistant principal. I knew Fremd was a great school, but the position wasn't even as enticing as the one that I was leaving. Balance. And it was more work for less money. Balance. But I told myself that this setback was not going to define my career. Balance. And now here I am in my dream job as the principal of your school. Balance. Standing on the stage at Writers Week with an absolute icon at Fremd, Mr. Bruce. So apparently, Mr. Bruce, you can have everything. If only for a moment. So you got a B+. Remember, one grade does not define you. Balance. You got cut from the team. There's other ways to get involved and other ways to improve yourself. Balance. You weren't accepted to NHS? Well, let me tell you, in other schools, NHS, the only requirement is a grade point average. So the gates are much wider open, and colleges and universities do not look at that as a requirement that is any more appealing on your application than anything else. Besides, I've never really gotten a free dinner or access to a club based on my National Honor Society membership. Balance. So keep working. Stay focused on the things that you can do to reach your goals. So let's get back to where we started. You know how the Karate Kid ends, right? The goons from the Cobra Kai dojo play dirty, and they injure our hero in the movie's final karate tournament. And in an attempt to knock Daniel out of the tournament, one of them sweeps his leg, injuring him and almost taking him out. But he fights on, injured and barely able to stand. But yet, he defeats his arch enemy with the move that took him forever to master, the crane technique. The moral of the story is this: when you find yourself in the championship match of life's greatest karate tournament, injured and barely able to go on, when you hear your opponent's coach yelling, "Sweep the leg," you better be able to stand there in the ring with confidence, because you know that you've learned the indispensable lessons that lead to success in karate and in life. You must have balance. Thank you.
Wow, what beautiful speeches. Let's give another round of applause. All right. What questions do we have for our two star speakers? White shirt right there. With the white shirt, yeah. So what AP class was it that you took?
You think I wanted to email or mail my homework to someplace? I didn't take any AP classes. It was AP Junior English was the only class that was available, and my junior English teacher talked me out of taking it, saying you don't want to go through all that hassle.
Cool. Next question. Yeah.
Mr. Tennifer, have you mastered that karate move?
Do you want to show us?
I do yoga in the morning, but I always do it in the comfort of my own home, so nobody has to see me, and that's about all I do about balance. And every time there is a one-legged pose like tree pose, I really struggle to do it. So I will not demonstrate that here. I'd like to avoid public embarrassment.
That's fair. Other questions?
In the front.
In the front. Hey.
Mr. Bruce, what do you have to say back to Mr. Tennifer's CPA
Oh.
Okay. I don't have much to say. Do you want to say anything? Do you want to express the reality? Everyone needs to take some econ. All right, that's the deal. Okay, it's a fundamental principle. It's called scarcity. You cannot have it all. You're never going to have it all. That does not I want to repeat, that does not mean you can't have a lot. Okay, so never kind of say that, but you always have to make choice. Every time you make a choice, you are making a sacrifice. So let me know the next time you didn't choose something. You just let me know that.
Is this a follow-up question up here? Yeah.
Mr. Bruce, what do you think of someone going to Indiana University?
All right, there's a background to that, right? I do just want you to know. You have to make a choice, and there's always sacrifices, opportunity costs. So, if unemployment's appealing, I think it's a great. There's background to that, okay? I don't want him to get any phone calls, okay, Mr. Jennifer. But if anyone's upset about that, Mr. Jennifer, okay. There's background, all right, really, okay. So just go.
Okay, this side? Yeah.
Okay, I have one question for Mr. Bruce. Like, after hearing like Mr. Tennifer's speech, like, how did like the concept of balancing relate to your own life and
Oh, what a good question.
Okay, so can you repeat that question one more time, even just for me, because I.
you were hearing like Mr. Tennifer's speech, like, how did like his concept of balance like relate to like your story of like the four siblings story, like?
Yeah, I don't, man, I got to be honest. In a lot of ways, I mean, and thank you for that opportunity. I mean, I'm glad that there's an outlet for that story. There's so much that was left unsaid, I think, in terms of these last 36 years. I think that my wife, if you've had me in class, my wife does everything in our house, okay, like everything. She's in charge. She also has an incredible memory. So even as I'm kind of reviewing this a little bit, she's saying, no, that's not the way it happened. It didn't happen. So I'm kind of saying, well, this happened. She said, no. So I think there's this element of, what are your priorities? I think that kind of balance becomes really important. And I don't know if this is really addressing the way, but it just kind of struck me. I think our family became unbalanced. And it took us a long, long, long time to try to kind of regain our footing a little bit. But I think anything that you experience with, you consider pain and loss and all that, you have to kind of figure out the priority. Not everything rises to the level that is going to be as traumatic to one person or another. That's not a judgment. It's just, for me, this was one of those things. All of us have those issues in our lives, and I think you will help balance yourself if you have those conversations. I think that's important. But in terms of my family and the balance, I don't know if I've processed that enough to actually give that a great answer. I got to be honest with you, but I'm gonna think about that. So I appreciate the question.
Other questions? Middle somewhere. Yes.
Mr. Bruce, so you said that writing sleep was one of your bucket list items. Do you have any more before you still want to graduate?
So what other bucket list items does Mr. Bruce has before he graduates?
Whoa. Yeah, what's coming up? Something's supposed to be coming up that I'd love to DJ. Okay, again, I think that would be that'd be sort of fun. But I don't necessarily have like I don't know. I've spent a long time sort of pushing aside the reality of what's going to happen in the next 4 months, but I got to think about that one though. But DJing, I think that would be certainly up there. Okay, so I am available. There's a cost though. Okay, and all that, but thank you.
I think we all look forward to that. Other questions? I see a hand there. Yeah.
This question is towards Mr. Bruce. When you graduate from here as a teacher, do you plan to do anything with the stories you shared with us in terms of inspiring other people?
So once you, once again, graduate from here, do you intend to use the story you just told to go on to other stuff?
Wow. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't even know I could do that story, when it came right down to it. It was funny because I was talking to, periodically people say, oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And it was like, oh, and I knew I could kind of go a familiar path or a less comfortable path. But for whatever reason, I reached out to even Ms. Zank. I said, I don't know what to do. I sometimes there's a lot of baggage with me. It's like, oh, and all that. But Ms. Zank, in sort of her way, just kind of said, tell the story you want to tell. It's going to come to you. Think about it. It'll be the perfect thing. So I didn't even know. I literally last night it was kind of like, I guess I'm all in. What else I'm going to do? But I've never thought about anything. I didn't know this was going to happen, so I haven't thought about anything more. But if it had some meaning to you, I'm very, very pleased.
Cool. We have time for a few more questions. Yeah.
Mr. Burns, this one's for you. Okay. So, what's one message or one of the most important messages you think your sister would want you to pass on to students like us?
It's a nice question.
Okay, wow. Man, when I was your age, I'll frame it to you this way. There was a lot of, it was different then, okay, right? It was a different, and I think, and I've said this to my students and all that, I think that high school is becoming like this career path. It's like, I gotta do this, because then college is more about getting the job, right? So high school, you better explore it, lock yourself into a career and go. When I was, again, I'm older and a boomer, and I have all that. So college was the time you explored, and then you kind of went these different paths. And even teaching, I mentioned like living at the time of the story, I had gone back, I thought I was going to go to law school, I ended up originally teaching. There were a lot of choices there. But I think Mary, I think her message would be this, because I think in the state of my confusion, I think she understood like there's that voice that you have, and she would sometimes say, you got to do what you got to do. My parents, teaching was just something like, what? Okay, like that was a completely foreign thing to my family. It wasn't necessarily well received, to be perfectly blunt. But I think her message to you is sometimes you got to find that voice. You got to. In doing that, sometimes you got to do what you know you have to do, and whatever that path is. And I guess I would sort of augment that a little bit. You might not know that path right now. Be open to the possibilities. You never know where life is going to take you. You never know how that path is going to wind. But I think Marianne would probably say, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and that might be your own thing, or a less traditional thing, or a less familiar thing.
Mike, so you found her hat after all? She asked you where.
Oh, I had the hat at home.
I know, but I'm saying, you found your cat, you found the hat.
Thank you. I still have it. I don't know if I look at it and I don't know if it'd be a good look. Okay, maybe I'll that'll be my bucket. I'll wear that.
All right, I think that puts a nice bow on everything. So thank you again for these awesome speeches. One more round of applause just for the fun of it. And have a good Wednesday.